Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if everything you've been told about finding your purpose and living in alignment isn't just a path to enlightenment, but a brilliantly designed trap that sets you up for a new kind of failure?
That's really the core question for today, isn't it? We're doing a really targeted deep dive here.
Right.
We're looking into the blueprint, the whole structure of this modern success and wellness paradigm.
The one that promises basically effortless fulfillment if you just,
Yep.
fix your thoughts.
Pretty much. Fix your internal state. And yeah, we see this push constantly by big names in the self-help world. Think figures like Melissa Ambrosini, among others.
And our mission today, it's not just about poking holes in the advice itself.
No, it's deeper.
We're analyzing the architecture of the belief system, how it's built.
Exactly. Looking at the core promises, what holds it all together rhetorically.
And crucially, exposing what we see as three major structural flaws. The cracks in the foundation that, they really show up when real life hits. The messy, unpredictable stuff.
We're kind of taking a metaphorical sledgehammer to the sanctuary walls.
Metaphorically speaking, yeah. To see what it's actually made of underneath the pretty surface. Is it solid? Or is it brittle?
We need to be pretty ruthless here because honestly, the stakes are high. If you follow a flawed blueprint like this...
It's not just disappointment.
No.
Yeah.
It often leads straight to self-blame, to shame, to pulling back when life inevitably throws a wrench in the whole alignment machine.
Because the system tells you failed, not the system.
Precisely. So we're examining that architecture of belief, not just admiring the facade.
Okay, we've got a lot to unpack. Let's get straight into the foundation.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we start, dismantling the whole structure, we need to really understand what this wellness cathedral, as we're calling it, actually promises you.
What's the pitch?
Yeah, what's the fundamental sales pitch? Why is it so appealing to so many people?
Well, the foundational assumption, that's probably the most alluring part. It offers this immediate, psychological relief from the harshness of reality.
How so?
We call it the anti-suffering thesis. Basically, the core belief, and this is pretty revolutionary if you think about the history of philosophy, is that suffering is not our natural state.
Right, which flips centuries of thought on its head.
Totally. Most major philosophies, ancient Greeks, Eastern religions, they see suffering as either inherent or maybe necessary for growth or just a basic part of being human desire, impermanence, all that.
But this new structure says, nope.
Nope. It says suffering is an aberration. It's a sign that you're living wrong, that you're out of alignment.
Okay. And the flip side of that?
The promise that a life of ease and flow and alignment, it's not some rare thing for monks or saints.
It's for everyone.
It's supposedly accessible to anyone who just commits to doing the necessary internal work, finding your true purpose.
So it kind of democratizes enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
Turns it into less of a struggle with the world and more of an internal tidying up job.
Exactly. And that's incredibly seductive because it implies safety, doesn't it? If I can just get aligned.
Then the chaos out there can't touch me.
That's the implication, but there's a catch. You can't just, waltz into this aligned life. You have to prove you want it.
Ah, the initiation. Which brings us to pillar one, the rock bottom revelation.
Right. The source material we looked at really highlights this narrative requirement. You need some kind of trauma, a life-altering event.
Like what?
A catastrophic personal failure, maybe a major illness, a deep emotional crisis.
Yeah.
Basically hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
It's often presented as actually required or at least heavily emphasized in all the success stories.
Okay, but why? Why is that trauma piece so necessary for the blueprint?
Well, it serves a couple of narrative purposes, really. First, it gives you the necessary leverage, the push to break free from what the system called inauthentic living.
The pain has to be bad enough to force a change.
Exactly. The cost of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of changing. But second, and this is really important for validating the whole structure, it justifies your past suffering. It wasn't meaningless chaos. It was a necessary initiation rite. Proof you were one of the chosen ones, someone whose pain was deep enough to finally make them listen to the call.
So it makes the guru's story and your own past pain feel necessary, part of the plan.
It neatly packages it all up, makes the eventual triumph seem inevitable, even predestined.
Okay, so you've been initiated through trauma. Now what? How do you navigate day to day? That seems to lead to pillar two, intuition as the ultimate guide.
Yes. Once you're on the path, the system tells you to filter all your decisions, big or small, through this purely subjective internal gauge.
So full body, hell yes.
That exact phrase. It's a mechanism designed really to bypass rational thought, complexity, ambiguity, all that messy stuff.
And this is where, the logic starts to wobble almost immediately, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if it's not a full body, hell yes, then it has to be a no. There's no room for maybe, or this is hard but necessary, or I feel conflicted but I need to do it anyway.
None. Think about just basic adulting.
Right.
Does anyone feel a full body hell yes about doing their taxes? Or, having that really difficult but necessary conversation with a family member?
Or maybe getting a medical procedure that's unpleasant now but good for you long term.
Exactly. Of course not. These are vital things we have to do as functional adults. They often involve reluctance, maybe fear, using our willpower to overcome how we feel in the moment.
But this system says that discomfort is basically a stop sign, a sign of misalignment.
Which fundamentally cripples our ability to take disciplined, uncomfortable action when needed. It makes feeling good the primary goal over doing good or doing necessary.
And how do you access this all-knowing intuition?
Well, the material points to specific practices. Meditation is key, visualization too.
So the system conveniently provides both the guide intuition and the approved tools meditation to access it.
It creates this perfectly self-contained, insulated loop. You don't need external facts or verification. You just need to feel it internally.
Which, okay, that leads us neatly into what you flagged as maybe the most powerful, but also the most potentially dangerous component.
Pillar 3, radical responsibility.
Right. This one, it hits hard initially because it weaponizes empowerment. It sounds so good.
It does. It states that real empowerment, true self-actualization, requires taking 100% ownership of your reality.
100%. No wiggle room.
No exceptions. That's the rule.
And the appeal there is, what? It gets rid of blame.
Totally. It creates this, intellectual sanctuary where blaming anything external is forbidden.
So blaming your parents, your past, the economy, societal barriers.
All of it. That's branded as victim mentality, and the only way to progress, to get aligned, is to shed that completely.
It's the ultimate empowering message on the surface, isn't it?
Yeah.
You are the sole architect,
Yeah.
master of your fate.
Hugely empowering, but, and this is the big but we'll dig into later, that absolute freedom comes with an absolute burden.
The flip side of total control is total blame if things go wrong.
Precisely. Okay, so the last couple of pillars are more about internal management and how things should feel.
Right.
Pillar 4 defines the main enemy, and it's not out there in the world. It's not your competition or a difficult boss or market conditions.
It's inside.
It's the inner critic, often personified with catchy, relatable names like the mean girl or inner saboteur.
And the system says you can't succeed externally until you deal with that internal voice.
Exactly. External success is deemed basically impossible until that critic is silenced or disarmed or somehow banished. It shifts the whole battlefield inward.
Okay, and finally.
Pillar 5 is purpose over hustle. This is the big promise, the guarantee of an easy life almost.
How did that work?
It says that when you're truly operating in alignment, doing your purpose, high performance shouldn't feel like hard work or force. It should feel like effortless flow.
So if you're struggling, if you're stressed, if you're working really hard and feeling burned out,
then, according to the system, you must be off path. You haven't done the internal work correctly. The struggle itself is proof of misalignment.
rather than say proof that you're tackling something really difficult that requires immense effort.
Exactly. It fundamentally misunderstands or misrepresents the nature of achieving difficult things. Hustle becomes a dirty word, a sign you're doing it wrong.
Okay, let's quickly recap that blueprint. It starts with this idea that suffering isn't natural, anti-suffering thesis. Then you need a rock-bottom trauma to get initiated. Navigate using only your full-body yes intuition. Take 100% responsibility for everything. Silence your inner critic. And finally, expect success to feel like effortless flow, never forced hustle.
That's the package. And you can see how it constructs this promise of total psychological invulnerability if you follow all the internal rules perfectly.
A very seductive blueprint indeed.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint. But what's really fascinating here is, well, how beautifully constructed the emotional and narrative parts are.
This is the why it works part.
Exactly. This is why this particular structure resonates so deeply with so many people, especially those feeling lost or searching for meaning in what feels like chaos. It's not just intellectual, its power is fundamentally emotional. It offers comfort by promising control.
It has that feel of faith, doesn't it? It provides certainty where life usually gives us, well, ambiguity and messiness.
Precisely. So we need to look at let's call them the decorative elements, the things that catch your eye and pull at your heartstrings.
The stained glass windows of the cathedral.
Perfect metaphor. The things that often blind people to the potential structural problems underneath. Let's start with the stained glass, the emotional appeals.
Okay.
The source material we analyzed really highlights how effective, vivid, relatable stories of personal suffering are. That's the immediate hook.
So the system isn't validated by, like, data or evidence?
Not primarily. It's validated by personal testimony, by narrative.
And the guru's own story is key here.
Absolutely critical. The vulnerability of the wellness leader is actually used as proof of concept. You see these specific, often harrowing examples used all the time.
Like stories of being hospitalized, maybe addiction, hitting financial rock bottom.
Or, as cited in our sources, struggles with infertility. Really deep, painful stuff. And then crucially, it's followed by this triumphant recovery narrative.
Which is explicitly linked back to discovering and embracing this alignment framework.
Yes. The pattern is always pain, then revelation, then alignment, which leads inevitably to success.
And that narrative arc is incredibly powerful for the listener, isn't it?
Hugely powerful. It does a couple of things. It tells you, look, your pain isn't unique or isolating. I've been there too. But then it says, your recovery can be extraordinary if you follow this exact path I discovered.
It turns a potentially random, messy life into a structured hero's journey.
Exactly. And it positions the teacher as this wise survivor who's already cracked the code you're desperately searching for. That builds immediate trust, immediate relatability.
Okay, so you're drawn in by the relatable story. Then what?
Then come the really big promises. We move up from the stained glass to the spires, the lofty conclusions. The language here often becomes almost spiritual, promising connection to something universal.
Tapping into that deep human desire for hidden potential.
Precisely. The claims become grand, universal, accessing some kind of universal magic or unlocking the unique gift that supposedly resides inside everyone, just waiting.
Dormant until you align.
Right. And the ultimate state promised is often phrased as living a life beyond your wildest dreams.
That specific phrase, beyond your wildest dreams. It's interesting because it's so unquantifiable.
It is. It sets this impossibly high bar. So if your life isn't currently beyond your wildest dreams, well...
It's easy to dismiss that as evidence you just haven't truly aligned yet. You haven't done enough work.
Exactly. It protects the system from failure. So you've got this combination, the relatable, I was broken like you entry point, and the lofty, you can have literally everything, promise. Huge emotional pull.
But a belief system, to really hold on to people, often needs more than just promises. It needs a stick as well as a carrot.
Ah, yes, the pressure mechanism, to keep people compliant. And here, the structure uses fear, but it's fear of internal chaos. Let's call these the gargoyles, the threat mechanism.
Okay, this sounds like where the toxicity can really start to creep in.
It is, because the system motivates compliance not through, say, external threats like hellfire or divine punishment in older systems,
but through internal psychological ones.
Exactly. The threat isn't damnation. The threat is your own mind collapsing, your own emotions spiraling.
How is that framed?
The warnings you hear explicitly claim that very common human states, anxiety, depression, creative blocks, even terrifyingly suicidal thoughts, will actually escalate if you remain out of alignment or if you dare to compare yourself to others.
Wow. So it takes normal, albeit painful, human emotional fluctuation.
And turns it into a flashing red warning light, a sign of deep, personal, systemic failure on your part.
So if I'm feeling anxious, which, let's be real, is almost a default state for many in modern life.
Right.
The structure tells me it's not because of, I don't know, global instability or work stress or maybe just my brain chemistry. It's evidence that I am personally failing the system.
Yes. It pathologizes normal struggle. It reframes it as misalignment.
That is incredibly insidious and really clever in a manipulative way.
It's the genius of the emotional architecture because think about it. If the system doesn't deliver that promised perfect happiness, where does the blame go?
Not onto the system.
Never onto the system. It gets externalized from the system and internalized entirely onto the listener. You weren't aligned enough. You didn't manage your energy right. You let the mean girl win.
So if you're anxious, depressed, broke, the conclusion is always, always your fault.
Always. It's a perfect feedback loop of potential self-blame.
And the ultimate goal, the peak of this cathedral, what's the claimed view from the top?
Total frictionless fulfillment. The ultimate promised state is described as internal happiness and freedom, pure bliss.
Which then results in you becoming the best version of yourself.
Effortlessly sharing your unique gifts with the world. The implication is, if you achieve internal perfection, external failure becomes either irrelevant or maybe even impossible.
It sounds like an architecture designed to eliminate friction entirely.
That's the promise. But, as we know, friction. That's often where strength and resilience are actually forged, isn't it?
Definitely. Which sounds like a good place to start looking at the cracks.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where, for me anyway, it gets really interesting. We're moving past the beautiful facade, the emotional pull.
We're getting into the critical findings. Where does the structural integrity actually start to break down under pressure?
Exactly. Let's start with structural flaw, #1. The fragile justification of alignment versus force.
Right. And the source material we analyzed flags this specific pillar, remember pillar 5, purpose over hustle, as having a high collapse probability.
Why high?
Because its core mechanism, this distinction between flow and force, is just, well, it's incredibly subjective, it's self-referential, and frankly, it utterly fails to account for how the real world actually works, especially when it comes to achieving anything difficult.
Okay, let's nail down that ambiguity first. The system draws this really sharp line, right? Virtuous flow is good, aligned, effortless. Destructive force is bad, misaligned, struggle.
That's the dichotomy they set up.
But how do you actually know the difference? If I'm pushing myself, say, learning a complex new coding language or staying up late to finish a vital project report, that feels like force. It requires effort, willpower.
It absolutely does.
So how do I objectively distinguish whether that effort is noble, disciplined work towards a goal, or whether it's proof I'm misaligned and should stop?
You can't. That's the problem. Because the distinction relies entirely on your subjective feeling about it, often in hindsight.
It's circular reasoning.
Completely. If the outcome was good and it felt easy, well, that must have been flow. If the outcome was bad or it felt difficult and stressful, then, oh, whoops, I guess I was forcing it. I must have been out of alignment.
Which gives you a convenient out for any failure or difficulty. I was just forcing it.
It's a perfect rationalization mechanism. But here's the kicker. The reality of high achievement, the very kind of achievement that the successful gurus promoting the system claim to have reached, often involves sustained, intentional force. This is the paradox of success.
The elephant in the cathedral, as you called it earlier.
Exactly. Our source material explicitly points out this massive contradiction. Think about the activities required for significant success.
Like what? Building a global business from scratch.
Right, or writing multiple best-selling books. Or, let's be honest, hosting a consistently top-rated, deeply researched podcast like this one. These things inherently require immense discipline. They require making agonizing strategic decisions sometimes. And critically, they demand extended periods of intense force. There's no way around it.
I'll say they're really practical for people listening.
Yeah.
Think about the force needed just to produce this deep dive.
Okay.
We might have moments of flow when we're recording and bouncing ideas off each other. Sure, that feels good.
Right.
But that flow is built on a foundation of hours, days, of really rigorous research, synthesizing complex information, dealing with tedious legal clearances for sources, managing logistical nightmares, making tough budget calls that might mean sacrificing personal time. That doesn't always feel like flow.
Not at all. Those bits, the difficult conversations, the relentless grind for quality even when you're tired, the sheer discipline of just showing up consistently week after week.
That's the definition of intentional force, or what people might call grit or perseverance.
Absolutely. So if the alignment doctrine demands that we systematically avoid all such force,
then the system logically cannot account for the very effort required for mastery or creation or just keeping a complex operation running smoothly.
It can't. It paints this picture where success just magically happens to you once you're sufficiently aligned internally. It completely ignores or dismisses what psychologists call deliberate practice, pushing yourself intentionally beyond your comfort zone.
It's like saying if Beethoven had a headache while composing the Ninth Symphony, he must have been out of alignment and should have just stopped for the day, taken a nap.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which leads directly to the practical danger here, the practical failure, the stifling of resilience.
How so?
Because this framework provides the perfect, spiritually approved excuse to just quit whenever things get hard.
Ooh, I feel stress. Must be misaligned. Better stop.
I feel forced trying to learn this difficult new skill or trying to repair this difficult relationship. Guess it's not meant to be. It's not in flow.
So you just retreat.
Exactly. The difficulty, the friction, the struggle that is actually inherent in growth and mastery. It gets relabeled as a definitive signal to back off, not a signal that you're learning or getting stronger.
Think about someone starting a business. Those first few months, maybe years, are often pure grind, anxiety, uncertainty.
Ooh.
This framework tells them that anxiety means they haven't found their true purpose yet. It encourages them to quit right when the perseverance might actually start paying off.
It potentially suffocates the very resilience that comes from pushing through challenges. That ability to tolerate and leverage necessary force is a hallmark of successful, resilient people and organizations.
But by labeling force as inherently bad as a sign of failure.
The alignment path creates this self-limiting feedback loop. It promises to save you from burnout.
But maybe it just prevents you from doing anything significant enough to potentially get burned out by in the first place.
That's a really sharp way to put it. It fundamentally confuses ease with success. Real success often requires pushing against resistance. This paradigm tells you to drop the weights the moment your muscles start to ache.
Not a great recipe for strength building.
Not at all. Okay, so if we connect that fragility around force versus flow to the bigger picture, the problems run deeper. It's not just about defining effort. It's about the actual material used to build some of the supporting beams in this cathedral,
Okay.
and the logical endpoint of its core philosophy when it crashes into the messy reality of life.
Okay, let's start with the building materials. You're calling this material deficiency flaw #2, the energetic foundation. What do you mean by that?
This is the part of the structure that seems, well, built without any solid, verifiable, empirical concrete. It relies almost entirely on metaphysical assertions presented as fact.
You mean all the talk about energy work?
Yeah, energy work, chakras, vibrational frequency, raising your vibration, all that language. It relies heavily, sometimes entirely, on metaphorical reasoning.
Like the examples in the source. Using terms like freeways or car accidents to explain how energy flows or gets blocked in the body.
Exactly. It's analogy pretending to be anatomy. Or physics.
Right, you hear terms borrowed from quantum physics all the time, don't you? Like vibration or frequency.
Misappropriated, really.
Mhm.
They're used purely as metaphors for feeling good or having positive thoughts. But it creates this system that sounds kind of scientific.
But you can't actually measure it
Yeah.
or test it or falsify it.
Precisely, which gets to the core issue of evidence quality. The foundation lacks empirical mortar. Look, an individual might absolutely report subjective benefits from, say, meditation or certain energy practices. We're not discounting personal experience.
Huh.
But the material presented as the foundational truth of how reality works, the chakra system, energy fields, dictating outcomes, it's based on a very specific, often new age spiritual worldview. It's not grounded in universally verifiable, falsifiable data that would make the structure strong for everyone, regardless of their personal beliefs.
So the moment someone pauses and asks, wait, is there actual testable evidence that my root chakra is blocked and that blocking it caused my financial problems?
The whole structure starts to wobble for them if you don't already buy into the specific metaphysical premises.
Like chakras being energetic freeways.
Then the entire alignment thesis, the idea that your internal energy state dictates your external reality, it has no solid ground to stand on. It fundamentally requires belief, not critical scrutiny.
Okay, so that's the potentially unstable building material. But you said this connects to an even more dangerous flaw, one that affects everyone, believer or not.
Yes. This vulnerability leads us straight into what we see as the most significant danger. Design failure, flaw #3, the radical responsibility paradox.
Back to pillar 3, where empowerment potentially turns toxic.
Exactly. Remember, its strength is that it brilliantly demolishes that sense of victimhood. Saying you are responsible for your response gives immense power back to the individual. That's the good part.
But the insistence on a 100% ownership,
Of all outcomes.
not just your responses.
Right. That's where it risks constructing what we're calling a prison of self-blame. Because if you are truly 100% responsible for everything in your reality,
Then what happens to external factors, the inconsequential external, as you put it?
they get completely erased from the equation. They have to be.
And we're not talking minor inconveniences here. We're talking
Big stuff. Systemic inequality, racism, sexism, poverty, massive environmental disasters, global economic meltdowns that wipe out savings, random devastating illnesses like cancer or autoimmune diseases hitting someone young and healthy, getting laid off because your whole industry tanked, nothing to do with your performance, or just the independent malicious actions of another person causing harm. Bad luck.
the framework. It has no place for any of that. No mechanism to account for randomness or external forces beyond your control.
Logically, it can't. If you are 100% responsible, then those outside forces must be somehow inconsequential or worse.
You must have somehow attracted them through your low vibration, or failed to align strongly enough to repel them.
That's the terrifying logical conclusion it pushes you towards, and that leads directly to the crucial logical flow failure.
It is.
When life inevitably doesn't conform to that beyond your wildest dreams promise, when suffering does happen despite your best alignment efforts, when the universe proves utterly indifferent to your vision board.
Then the only logical conclusion available within this closed system is
Personal failure, listener failure. The system itself is perfectly insulated against critique. It's always the user who failed to apply it correctly.
Can we run a hard scenario?
Let's. Imagine someone diligently doing all the practices, meditating daily, visualizing, journaling, feeling aligned, but then they get diagnosed with a serious chronic illness. Or their aligned dream business gets wiped out by a natural disaster, like a fire or flood.
What does the framework force them to ask themselves?
Did I fail to align properly? Did my negative energy somewhere deep down attract this catastrophe? Did I not vibrate high enough? The empowerment to create your reality is perfectly mirrored by the crushing shame of being unable to prevent or deflect random misfortune.
So the framework effectively transfers the blame for systemic injustice, or just plain bad luck, away from the external world.
And places it squarely onto the individual's shoulders. It weaponizes personal failure as proof of spiritual or energetic inadequacy.
The issue isn't the empowerment part itself.
No, taking responsibility for your actions and responses is crucial. The problem is that this framework provides absolutely no boundary, no point at which responsibility stops and acceptance of external reality begins.
It demands you take responsibility for things that are fundamentally uncontrollable.
Yes. And when reality inevitably intervenes because bad luck happens, injustice exists, pandemics strike, the framework doesn't lead to healthy responses like acceptance or grief or rational problem solving. It leads directly to profound shame and self-recrimination.
It's an intellectual structure, an architecture that's fundamentally incapable of handling chaos, which makes it incredibly fragile when faced with the actual world we live in.
The danger zone is precisely that blurred line between owning your actions and being forced to own uncontrollable events. This wellness cathedral seems to intentionally blur that line to maintain its central promise of absolute control.
A promise it ultimately can't keep. Okay, so putting this all together, what does it really mean? We've established these potential flaws. The shaky definition of effort, the questionable materials, the toxic potential of total responsibility. Have we seen this kind of architecture before?
Oh, absolutely. This isn't a brand new blueprint. It's more like a modern renovation of some much older and often equally flawed designs.
And importantly, do we have better alternatives? More resilient ways to build a strong mindset?
Definitely. And it's vital to place this current wellness paradigm in its historical context to see the patterns. Let's look at some similar structures that collapsed or showed major weaknesses over time.
Because the core idea that your internal state magically manifests your external reality isn't new at all, is it?
Not even close. The blueprint of this modern wellness trend echoes very strongly things like the prosperity gospel.
Explain that quickly.
That's the belief, really popular in certain religious circles, that strong faith will be directly rewarded by God with financial wealth and physical health. If you're faithful enough, you'll be rich and healthy. If you're not,
then you must lack faith.
Exactly. And it also echoes certain strands of 19th and early 20th century New Thought philosophy, ideas that got repackaged more recently into things like The Secret or the broader law of attraction movement.
What's the common thread there?
They all share that same fundamental and potentially toxic promise, that internal shifts, whether it's religious faith, positive thinking, or energetic alignment, will automatically and reliably manifest a desired external reality, and crucially, allow you to bypass suffering and material lack.
They all frame the universe as this kind of transactional vending machine. Put in the right internal coin, faith, positivity, alignment, get the external prize, wealth, health, success.
That's a great way to put it, a transactional system rewarding internal purity with external goodies.
And what does history tell us about how these systems hold up over time?
The historical record is pretty consistent, actually. Their structural collapse, or at least major crises within them, happens precisely when those promised outcomes fail to materialize for people who are genuinely diligent and faithful adherents.
So you pray really hard, you visualize constantly, you work on your alignment, and you still get sick. or your business still fails.
Exactly. When reality doesn't deliver, the only conclusion available within the system is a crisis of faith for the individual. Or worse, a crisis of character.
Leading inevitably to that accusation, well, you just didn't have enough faith, or you weren't thinking positively enough, or...
You must have been vibrating at the wrong frequency. The modern wellness version just psychologizes that same blame the victim outcome. The failure isn't framed as spiritual inadequacy, but as a failure of internal vibration or not listening to your intuition correctly.
The structure protects itself by sacrificing its followers when it fails.
That's the pattern.
Yeah.
So how do we find a better foundation, a more durable architecture for the mind?
We look to older schools of thought, perhaps. Ones that have actually weathered centuries of chaos and survived.
Precisely. Let's examine Superior Design 1, Stoicism. This is an ancient philosophy, but its architecture is built specifically for enduring human imperfection and the randomness of the external world.
How does Stoicism offer a more robust structure? How does it address those flaws we identified?
It tackles flaw #3, the radical responsibility paradox, head-on. It fundamentally redraws the boundaries of what you're responsible for, instead of demanding 100% ownership of outcomes.
Which is impossible.
Right. Stoicism offers the dichotomy of control. It forces you to clearly, rigorously differentiate between what is truly within your control and what is not.
What's in our control, according to Stoic?
Judgments about things, our values, our choices, our actions, our responses to events, basically our inner world and our deliberate actions.
And what's not in our control?
Almost everything else. External events, the weather, the economy, pandemics, other people's actions and opinions. Our health, to a large degree. Our reputation. The ultimate outcome of any project we undertake. Bad luck, good luck.
That distinction. That feels like the crucial reinforcement the wellness paradigm is missing.
It is the missing structural reinforcement. It creates a psychological foundation that doesn't automatically crumble when life throws a brick through the window. When a trauma happens, the Stoic framework asks a different question.
Not, why did I attract this?
No. It asks, okay, this external event has happened. It is outside my control. Now what is within my control, my response? How should I choose to respond virtuously and effectively to this reality?
One question empowers you to act in the present and future,
while the other paralyzes you with unanswerable, self-blaming questions about the past. Stoicism teaches you to focus your energy, your force, only where it actually has leverage on your own choices and actions, rather than wasting it trying to mentally control an uncontrollable external world.
Okay, that's a powerful alternative for dealing with external chaos. What about the internal landscape, the inner critic that the wellness model tries to silence?
The source material also points towards Superior Design 2, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, CBT. This offers a really practical, evidence-based alternative to the often vague metaphysical approach of fighting your inner critic. It directly addresses flaw #4.
How so?
Well, the Wellness Cathedral tells you to battle or banish this personified mean girl using maybe energy work or affirmations or just sheer willpower, aiming for this state of inner silence.
Which sounds exhausting and maybe impossible.
Right. CBT takes a different approach. It provides a practical, observable, and scientifically validated toolset for deconstructing negative self-talk. And it doesn't rely on believing in energy blockages or anything metaphysical.
Give us an example. How would CBT handle that mean girl voice differently?
Okay, let's say the mean girl voice pipes up after you make a small mistake at work and says, "See, you messed up again. You're a complete failure. You'll probably get fired."
The wellness model might say, what? Cancel that thought. Vibrate higher. Something like that. Or tell your mean girl she's not welcome here. CBT does something different. It acknowledges that negative self-talk is usually a pattern of learned thinking errors or cognitive distortions.
Okay.
In that example, CBT would help you identify this specific distortion. Saying you made one small mistake, therefore you are a total failure, is classic all-or-nothing thinking, or maybe catastrophizing.
So instead of fighting a metaphor, mean girl, with another metaphor, vibrations,
you're applying logical analysis, almost like an engineer, to an identifiable thought pattern, a specific error in processing information.
And then what?
Then you challenge the evidence for that distorted thought. You don't try to silence the critic, you question its premise. Okay, I made a mistake. Does that really mean I'm a total failure? What's the actual evidence for my overall competence? What's a more realistic assessment?
So you're reframing it using rational thought. Exactly. CBT focuses on identifying concrete, measurable cognitive distortions and replacing them with more balanced, evidence-based thinking. It's an engineering or skills-based approach to mental well-being rather than a purely spiritual or energetic one.
Okay, so we have Stoicism offering resilience against external shocks by defining the boundaries of control, and CBT providing practical, non-metaphysical tools for managing internal negativity.
And critically, both offer the genuine empowerment of taking responsibility for what you can control, your thoughts and actions, without burdening you with the toxic paradox of blaming yourself for absolutely everything that happens to you.
Much more durable architecture, it sounds like.
Right. So we've done the deconstruction, but knowledge isn't much use unless you can apply it, right? The goal here isn't just to tear down this wellness cathedral and leave rubble.
Because the underlying desires are valid. People do want purpose. They do want inner peace.
Exactly. Those are legitimate human needs. So the real question is, how do we fortify the structure? How do we take the valuable parts, the focus on self-awareness, on internal authority, and give them real structural integrity, make them earthquake-proof for the reality of life?
Okay, so where do we start the renovations? Reinforcing the foundation seems logical.
Let's start there. Reinforcement 1. Integrate the Stoic dipstick. This is our direct countermeasure to the overreach of that radical responsibility pillar.
The Stoic dipstick, I like it. How does it work?
It's a regular, maybe even daily critical practice. You take that pillar of responsibility, but you constantly test it with this simple check. Is this specific situation, this problem I'm facing, or this outcome that occurred, is it actually within my sphere of direct control?
My thoughts, my actions, my responses.
Yes.
Whether the stock market,
Right.
what someone else thinks of me, whether I get that random illness.
Exactly. If the answer is no, this is fundamentally outside my control, then you consciously release yourself from any internal obligation to feel shame or personal failure about it.
It acknowledges you're 100% responsible for your response to the event.
How you interpret it, the meaning you make, the actions you take next, that's all you.
But you are decidedly not responsible for the event itself happening to you.
That's the firewall. That's what prevents the self-blame cycle from starting. The foundation won't crack under external pressure if you've already accepted the inherent unpredictability and, frankly, indifference of the universe.
You have to accept, at a gut level, bad things sometimes happen to good, aligned people.
Well,
Because the universe doesn't actually care about your alignment level.
right. Your power lies entirely in your interpretation and your reaction, not in some magical ability to attract only good fortune and repel all misfortune. That distinction has to be rock solid.
Okay, foundation reinforced. What about the pillars? That fragile alignment versus force one needs work.
Needs replacing entirely, I'd argue. So, pillar replacement 2, redefine flow as engaged mastery. We need to ditch that simplistic, self-defeating dichotomy.
Engaged mastery, where does that come from?
It draws more from applied psychology, the study of expertise, how people actually get good at difficult things. And it's a superior pillar because it accepts, even embraces, the reality of effort.
It doesn't pretend mastery is effortless.
Not at all. It acknowledges that meaningful, complex, high-performance work, whether it's art, science, business, relationships, is inherently characterized by oscillation. It's not a flat line of easy flow, it's a wave.
Okay, what does that oscillation look like day to day? If I'm trying to achieve something really hard.
It means you'll naturally move back and forth between that wonderful, effortless state of flow when the skill feels automatic. You're totally immersed, just executing.
The good bit.
The really good bit. And the necessary, deliberate, sometimes frustratingly effortful state of practice or drilling or problem solving or learning.
The hard bits, where you're pushing your boundaries.
Exactly. These difficult states are what the psychologist Anders Ericsson famously called deliberate practice, where you are intentionally working just outside your current comfort zone, making errors, correcting, struggling a bit.
So under this new pillar, when I hit that moment of intense frustration, or I really feel the force required to learn that complex new skill, or push through a creative block.
That is not a signal that you are misaligned or off path.
It's a signal that
It's a signal you are learning, you are practicing, you are mastering. The force isn't a sign you should stop. It's often a prerequisite for earning the next level of flow. It's part of the process.
So this replacement pillar accepts effort, frustration, struggle as natural, even valuable, healthy parts of achieving something worthwhile.
Absolutely. It turns resistance from a bug into a feature. It recognizes that stress in the right dose is stimulus for growth, not just a warning sign.
Okay, stronger foundation, replace pillar. What about the overall architectural approach, the philosophy?
We need a fundamental shift there, too, moving away from seeking this fragile state of perfection and freedom from difficulty towards embracing durability and resilience through difficulty. That brings us to new architectural approach 3, the anti-fragile mindset.
Antifragile. That's Nassim Taleb's concept, right? Something that doesn't just resist shocks, but gets stronger from them.
Precisely. The modern wellness paradigm, at its best, aims for robustness, building a mindset that can withstand shocks without breaking, which is okay.
But antifragile is better.
Far superior, arguably. We want to design a mindset, a psychological structure that doesn't just withstand disorder, chaos, shocks, stressors, but actually gains strength, capability, and options from them.
Like muscles getting stronger from the stress of lifting weights, or the immune system getting smarter from exposure to pathogens.
Exactly like that. The earthquake doesn't just fail to damage the building. Encountering the earthquake somehow strengthens the frame and makes it better prepared for future earthquakes.
How does a listener practically start building an anti-fragile mindset? It sounds good, but how do you do it?
It's partly about building in redundancy and optionality in your life, sure, but mentally, it's about reframing stressors and failures. In the alignment paradigm, if your aligned business fails, that's devastating proof of your misalignment. It leads to shame, maybe quitting entrepreneurship altogether.
Right.
In the anti-fragile mindset, that same business failure, while painful, is also viewed as a massive, incredibly valuable, albeit expensive, education. You gained crucial information, learned hard lessons, maybe spotted new opportunities because of the failure. You gained from the disorder.
So practically it means maybe intentionally embracing small stressors, not avoiding them.
Yes. Taking on challenging projects slightly outside your comfort zone. Actively seeking out honest, critical feedback, even though it might sting. Putting yourself in mildly uncomfortable social or professional situations. You see these not as risks to your precious alignment, but as essential strengthening exercises. Resistance training for the psyche.
So you don't just tolerate difficulty, you strategically seek out the right kinds of difficulty, knowing they make you stronger, more adaptable, more capable in the long run.
You see challenges, the tough conversations, the financial setbacks, the projects that don't work out, not as dire warnings that you're out of alignment and need to retreat to safety.
But as valuable data points, information, opportunities to learn and increase your future options.
Exactly. It builds resilience proactively. So that brings us to the final architect's inspection summary.
Sum it up for us.
The original wellness paradigm's strength, its valid core, is that focus on internal authority, on self-awareness, maybe even intuition as one input. Those are valuable starting points.
Right.
But for that structure to become truly durable, genuinely weatherproof, capable of housing a full, complex human experience, one that includes failure, injustice, setbacks, and just plain bad luck.
It needs these reinforcements we've discussed.
It requires the stoic dipstick for realistic responsibility boundaries. It needs the CBT toolkit for practical internal management. It needs the engaged mastery pillar that honors effort. And overall, it benefits immensely from that anti-fragile architectural philosophy that learns and grows from stress.
So you keep the positive intent, achieving internal freedom, purpose, happiness. But you rebuild with materials and designs that make that freedom survivable, realistic, and genuinely empowering, even when the storms of the real world hit.
Precisely. It transforms a fragile, aspirational dream into a potentially resilient, lived reality.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. What's one empowering belief you've held that, upon closer inspection, might actually be setting you up to blame yourself when things go wrong?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.
Thank you for joining us.